Hello. Today I'm going to be doing a very detailed beginner or advanced friendly shaker tutorial. Everything you need, A to Z, the processes I use, the whole thing will be filmed. Maybe sped up at some points, but the whole thing will be filmed. So let's get started. First thing you'll need is a mold that's made for shakers. These, for example, are made for shakers. These, for example, are not made for shakers. Okay. Now, this mold in particular have these ridges right here. If you can see right here, see that? That one right there. That one right there. They make these so that you can pour whatever oil or whatever substance you want into the inside to make things shake. Now, this shaker mold has no ridges, none whatsoever. In a situation like this, after you pour your resin, as we'll do with this, you're gonna have to drill a hole somewhere. In some place, usually at the apex, at the highest point of the mold, that's where you want to drill a hole. But yeah, the ridges help a lot. You don't need to drill anything. These molds, you're gonna have to drill a little bit. Okay, so first things first, this mold's been sitting outside for a while, so I'm gonna take my Scotch heavy duty tape and we're gonna kind of like clear out any dust or anything like that. Now that the dust is clear, we're going to put this to the side, and I will take a measuring cup, preferably with these lines on it. I'm going to be pouring Pudo resin. It's AB 1:1, which means it's 1:1, as in if I put in, let's say, 5 millimeters of this, I need to put in 5 millimeters of this. So that's what we're going to do right now. I think for this mold, I'm going to be using, I'll use 60, I think I only need 40 millimeters or like even 30, but I'll put in 60 and I'll use the excess resin somewhere else. Alright, I put my gloves on just in case. Always use gloves with resin and a mask, and we're gonna mix. We're going to mix until the liquid is pretty much clear and only bubbles are left. It's now mixed and there are no striations, no fogginess, just bubbles. That means the resin is ready to go. Alright. Today I'm doing white. I'm going to color the resin white with acrylic. One thing to note is adding too much of any kind of additive, whether it be sprinkles, whether it be mica powder, liquid pigments, acrylic, anything like that. Too much will cause your resin to cure bendy. You don't want that. Put in enough to get the color's vibe. But not enough so that the curing process in any way is hindered. And I'm gonna mix that up really good. All done. I mixed it really good. I kept going for a while, making sure it's all even. Now, a lot of times when you just pour resin, you'll get bubbles on the inside surface. So when you do demold it on the face of it, you'll see bubbles. One thing I found helps with this is 99% isopropyl alcohol. This thing is amazing. So you spray inside before you pour, and the alcohol kind of thins the resin. And it helps avoid, I mean, sometimes I still do get bubbles, but it helps avoid any bubbles. So, a little spritz like that. And then we Actually, let me bring you in closer. As you can see here, when you spray 99% alcohol, it thins the resin. So you see how it's like coming out of the confines of the mold. That's gonna happen sometimes. A good way to avoid this is to spray it and then maybe wipe down the top surface of the mold so it doesn't overflow. But in a situation like this, you see how the resin kind of slowly started going back. That works too, or if it's a little too overfull, I'll go in with a tissue like I will now and I'll kind of wipe away the excess. I'll show you that too. Alright, now that that's done, I see some bubbles rising to the surface. I'm gonna go in again with some alcohol and spray. That one's being stubborn. So I'll just pop it like that. And now we wait for 24 hours for this to cure. I forgot to mention, you see how the holes here are intact, but this one kind of overflowed. Again, easy peasy. You take a piece of tissue paper, roll it up, and try to get access to that part. Now we wait for 24 hours for this to cure. 24 hours has passed and these look solid, so let's demold them. As you can see here, no crazy air bubbles. No bubbles here either. And none here. Now, you see how the ridges are obviously indented into the part. This is where, if you made a piece with this mold, this is the time where you would have to drill a hole here, basically like anywhere where you know you'll get access to this little section. So probably here would be the apex, for this one maybe here, and for this one maybe here. So you would drill the hole at this point and then carry on with everything. But since we have these ridges, we're just gonna carry on without drilling anything. Okay, for this next step, you're gonna need transparency paper. You can see I cut out the cloud for that other shaker beforehand. This paper is kind of like a barrier, just like a temporary barrier before you coat the top with resin. As we go through the steps, you'll understand better. So first what we want to do, we'll take one of these, we'll put this paper on top of it, and we're gonna trace with an X-Acto knife. Some people use a marker to trace and then cut. I found that wiping off, sometimes, especially since this is white, wiping off any kind of marker stains from this transparency paper doesn't always work. You can still see kind of like a shade of the marker. So tracing it with a X-Acto knife is much better. Another thing is that when you start tracing, you do not want to trace at the, you do not want to trace till the end of the piece. You see this border here? You want to trace in the middle of that border. And I'll bring you closer and show you how that's done. So, I've traced the general shape, and I traced it like this, in the middle of this border, not to the edge. I didn't trace to the edge. Make sure to trace in the middle of this border. So you're covering up this section too, but you're not going to the edge. And the reason is because after we attach this transparency paper to this, we're gonna coat it with resin fully. And what the transparency paper does, it kind of acts as a barrier so the resin can sit on top of this empty space. But if any of the transparency paper is till the edge, then the resin won't touch the resin of this piece. It'll touch the transparency paper, which can cause leaks. So again, only trace till the middle of the border, not till the edge. Now that we've traced it, we're gonna cut it out. Now that this is cut out, I'll place it on top of here and make sure that there is space around everything. And there you go. We have space. We have resin poking out all along. So this is perfect. This is what we want. And I'll do the rest for these as well. Now that we've cut up the plastic transparency paper, you can see that none of them are reaching the edge of the resin piece. So that's the heart one. This one, again, none of it is reaching the edge of the resin piece. And this one, same thing. None of it reaching the edge. All right, now let's put these to the side. This is the part where you can fill your shakers with anything you want. Well, anything that'll fit. For example, you can fill your shakers with things like this, little glitter stuff, little charm thingies, and these are called inclusions. You can fill your shakers with glitter, you can fill your shakers with these not paper, but like thin plastic things, holographic flakes. The choices, I mean, there's so much that you can do with it. You can choose to fill your shakers with that kind of stuff, leave it dry, and then cover everything up. However, if you want them to move around smoothly, you want baby oil. I use Equate. You can use whatever you want, but baby oil makes these things move smoothly within the shaker when you rotate it, play with it, stuff like that. Some people have been known to use water, but I've heard that water can mold, so I've never used it, I've avoided it, and I couldn't tell you how it is, so I stick with baby oil. Now, like I said, this is the moment where you would add any solid pieces or glitter. We add the oil later. I will be adding this. Extra fine glitter, crystal diamond, kind of like a sparkly little dusting of this. Now, if you add very thin glitter like this, or even very thin things like this, or holographic flakes, when you place your plastic cover on top, because of static, some of it might stick to this. And it might mess it up, it might come on the border, you know, you don't want that mess. So a good little trick is to take your baby oil. Remember, we're not filling it up right now, but I use this little bottle. It's pretty easy to get into the gaps. You take a little bit of baby oil and you drop a couple of drops in. And what this does is it prevents any of this thin glitter and stuff from sticking to the paper when you do add it. And then I'll go in and make sure the oil touches all the glitter. No stragglers. There we go. Now we attach the transparency paper on top. What I use is UV resin. The reason I use this is because at the end we're gonna coat the whole thing in ordinary 2-part epoxy resin, so it's still gonna be solid. Like I said, the transparency paper is just a temporary barrier. So this is the one I use, and I'll line it around the border, and then I'll stick the transparency pieces on it, and then I'll use this little UV flashlight, flash cure it, as in cure it for just a little bit, and then I'll set it in the sun for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll show you that process. As you can see, I did not put any of this UV resin in the ridge. I did it till the edge of the ridge, and then I started on the other. Now, I'm gonna take my transparency paper and make sure your transparency paper is pretty much clear, that it doesn't have any smudges on it. Maybe hold it from the borders, and I'm gonna gently just place it. Press down, make sure the UV resin makes connection everywhere, and as you can see, none of the transparency paper goes to the edges. It's all in the middle, okay? Now that I've seen that the transparency paper has made its connection everywhere, all is good, I'll take my UV light, do a quick little cure, just so it stays for a bit. And then I'm gonna put this away and complete the others. This is one of my windows. I have some sun coming here. I opened the window so there's no glass, and I'll just place these like this. And we'll come back in 15 minutes. Okay, so now that the UV resin is cured, we're going to start the doming process. So here I've prepared some resin. It's about 20 milliliters, which is going to be more than enough to dome. And before I start doming, I wanted to show you why I kept repeating that you shouldn't cut the transparency paper to the edge, because, and I'll show you a little bit up close right now. If you can see, okay, hold on, let me hold it better. I think that's better, yeah. If you can see here, I am going to put resin all over this thing. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag the resin all the way to the edge. You see that? So now that resin has encompassed that transparency paper, it's blanketed that transparency paper. And that's the security that we need. That's gonna prevent all your leaks. This blanketing, this encompassing. Because if our transparency paper, if we cut it to the edge, what would happen is that this resin would bond with that transparency paper at the edge and not the resin of this white piece, right? Resin bonds with resin way better than resin would bond with transparency paper, which is why we want to take this resin all the way to the edge like this. And that's what I'm going to do for all of them. Also, this ridge right here, this ridge right here, I'm not going to be putting any resin inside it. The resin's going to be, let's see if I can. This ridge, we're gonna avoid it completely. We're gonna put resin till the edge of this, like that, and then till the edge of this part here. But we're not gonna put any resin in here, in this little hole. This little hole right here, we're not gonna put any resin in here, only to the edges, okay? So as you can see here, I took the resin right to the edges. Here as well, it's all right to the edges, and it's completely covering that transparency paper. And this ridge right here, where we would put in our oil, I avoided that. So I put the resin on the transparency paper and on the sides of that ridge, but I completely left that ridge open. Just like here, I left that ridge open right here. And just like here, I left that ridge all open right there. I'll try to get a closer shot. Okay, if you can see that, I put my macro lens on, but I put it on the edges, not in the hole. Okay, now hopefully you understand the whole ridge thing. The benefits, well, you know how this one we would have to drill a hole in it once the piece was done so that we could pass oil through. The benefit of that is that there's no ridge on top, so you don't need to be careful, you just coat it all over. But for the ones with ridges, gotta be careful, okay? And now, usually I use 99% isopropyl alcohol to pop the bubbles. However, as we know, resin thins out when we spray isopropyl alcohol, and I don't want this doming to start falling off the edge. So this time I'm gonna use a lighter, very safely. I'm gonna use a lighter and I'm gonna pop any bubbles on the surface. Now that these are all nice and clear, we're gonna wait 24 hours for this to cure. Okay, now these are all dry. It's been 24 hours. One thing I want to mention is babysitting. You have to babysit your resin pieces. Like after you pour and you leave it alone, whatever you're doing, come back after 30 minutes, after an hour to see how they're faring. For example, this one, the resin started seeping into the hole. What I did was, and I couldn't film it because it was dark, I took this syringe. Now please, 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 please be very careful when using something like this. Also, never use something like this for resin and then anything else. I have this syringe. I don't even know why I have it, but I had it in my medicine cabinet and I used it. And all you have to do is poke it through. So I poked it through when the resin was still mushy, and I did it very carefully. I poked it through when the resin was still mushy and I got a hole in there. Okay, now if the resin was hard, I didn't babysit it, I didn't see it start seeping in, what I would do would be to use this, my little drill. And I would use the smallest bit I have and drill in very carefully. But because I was babysitting and because the resin was still a little soft, I was able to do this, which is much easier and less damaging. Okay? Alright. So, once again, please be very careful. I use this once for resin and I only use it for resin now, only for shakers. I used to use this to pour oil in to the shakers. I used to take my baby oil, suck it up, pour it in. But then once I got this bottle, I thought this would be, this is much safer. So I stopped using this, but it's still in my workshop and I still use it when I need to. And I never use it for anything other than resin. Just wanted to let you know about the babysitting and how I fixed that. Okay. So we're on the last leg of our shaker journey. I'm going to take these away. This is the point where I fill it with oil. This, I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to open my oil bottle up. And I'm only going to put in enough for one shaker. I think that's more than enough actually. Maybe put a little bit back. So this is the point. You have your shaker ready, you have the top coat, now you're gonna pour oil. Usually if I have other types of inclusion in here or even just this glitter, I can pour clear oil. This time I'm gonna try something different. This will be an experiment for me. These are potion bottles, so I want something swirly and something magical-ish. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take mica powder, I'm gonna put it into the oil, swirl it around, and then hopefully it gives me the effect I want for me to pour into the shakers. So I'm gonna use this berry color first. Alright, now that that's in, let's cap this up and shake it and see if it gives us the look. I think it does. Okay. And the reason why we put only enough for one shaker is because I want to change the color of the mica powder in every shaker. We're ready. Whenever I'm pouring shakers, I use a towel because oil will drip. And I think we'll start with this one. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pour the resin, the oil into this. Then I'm going to put some rubbing alcohol on the towel. Then I'm gonna wipe the hole for any oily residue. Then I'm gonna take my UV resin and put it into the hole, and then I'm gonna shine my light onto it. Okay, so that's the process. One thing is, when you're pressing in the liquid, don't just keep pressing in. Release it so that the bubbles get released too. So, for example, press in, you see it filling up, release. Let the bubbles come out. Press in, because then you're building too much pressure on this. Alright, we're almost done. I think that's good. I left a little bubble there so we could actually see it move. So I always leave a little bubble, and that's good. Now we're gonna take alcohol and we're gonna clean it up. I'm not considering where the other oil is, I just want to clean up that ridge hole area. Okay, now that that's cleaned up, I'm going to let a little bit of UV resin soak into that hole. Like that. Flash cure it. And now take a little bit more and encompass this whole area. Then flash cure it. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same to the rest. I already love how this looks. Looks like a potion. Okay, now that these are done and they're looking like actual potions, super cute. We only flash cured the ridge parts. If you notice, I didn't put that light on for long. So this is the moment where I would put them in the sun for 15 minutes. Unfortunately, where I live right now, the sun is not out, so I guess it's a good thing because I get to show you my other way of curing these UV resin parts. This is a tiny little UV lamp. I think it's meant for nails, but I use it for this. And I just set this up here and I'll put it over these guys, okay? And then this little USB, I put it into my Anker battery pack like this. And then I'm gonna keep this on for 10 minutes. Alright, now that they're cured, I'm gonna put this away. Oh, before I forget, I used berry for the heart, purple, dark purple for the diamond, and mint for the circle. Okay, this is cured. Everything's good. Now I'm gonna wash them with soap and water, and then we're gonna put keychains on them. All right, these are now nice and clean. So what did we do? We filled them up with oil, then we wiped this area with alcohol so that no oil residue remains, and then we did a tiny little dot of UV resin, cured it, then a bigger blob of UV resin, cured it, and then we set them under this UV lamp for 10 minutes to cure because the sun wasn't out. And then I went ahead and just washed them between my hands with soap and water. So now we put the keychains on. I use these guys. They're called D-rings because the hole's already in there, and a circular, I would have to get a very big jump ring for a circular one to fit. So a D-ring is just fine. Now, at this point I'd like to introduce another shaker I've made. In this situation, the baby oil was clear, and I put it in on this side, as you can see, the UV resin. And I use chunky glitter, and it kind of moves slowly, as you can see. All right, in this situation, there's no hole like these guys have. I use a bail. These, okay? I use a bail. What I do is I first attach the bail in the position I want with, let me see if I can find it, with E6000 glue. So I attach that bail where I want. I let the E6000 glue dry, and then I go over the bail with some UV resin and I set it in the sun. Okay, so in a situation where you don't have a hole, that's my method. I think I also have a video on TikTok about it. But yeah. Okay. D-rings, and then we have the keychains. All right. Okay. So what I do with these is, so when it's a circle, we usually go like this, right? But a D-ring, we're just gonna pull like that. Open that up. Take your piece. Set that in as much as you can go, and then slowly tighten it. There we go. That's how you make that work, right? And then I'll go in, and I guess it's easier if you put in the keychain first, but I feel like all the dangling around, it's kind of annoying to get it into the hole already, so the dangling around is kind of distracting. All right, there we go.